Today's lecture will be over Chapter 13, Section 4, the objectives. Number 1, define Eastern Europe as a cultural crossroads. Number 2, analyze Eastern Europe's turmoil in the 20th century. Number 3, explain how the economy of Eastern Europe has developed. Number 4, explain how ethnic and religious diversity has defined Eastern European culture. And number 5, identify the challenges involved in moving toward economic growth and political freedom. What we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at Eastern Europe. One of the things that's difficult about this area is going to be the fact that for a long time, from again the early 1900s, so about 1992, a lot of this area was very closely tied to the Soviet Union. A lot of people, when you start going through your map tests and studying, Western Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe is very easy, and they start getting into some of these countries in here and it gets a little bit more difficult. One thing to kind of understand and know is that a lot of these countries are going to go ahead, they're going to have very similar cultures, but then their cultural groups are going to be a little bit different. So again, do the best that you can in regards to the groups and types of people and so on and so forth. But today what we're going to look at is we're going to look at this region right here, and we're going to talk about how this area is a cultural crossroads. What is a cultural crossroads? It's a place where various cultures are going to cross paths. And so what happens is that the question is going to be, what part of Europe is a cultural crossroad? Now the thing is that Western Europe, you guys again already kind of know this because we've already studied this. Western Europe and Northern Europe are going to do a great job of trading throughout the entire world. Remember, they're going around the southern tip of Africa. We're going to see the Southern Europe is going to be able to be connected to Africa, Asia, through the Mediterranean Sea. The difference is that this area right here is connected through land, and what you're able to do is that you're able to really have migration, and migration is going to connect these areas because you're going to see religion, you're going to see goods. All of this stuff is going to be going back and forth, but it's going to be doing that for a very, very long period of time. So when we start looking and we start saying what part of Europe is a cultural crossroads, it's going to be Eastern Europe. So location, again, we just talked about, it's going to be connected between Asia, Europe, and you could also throw in Africa there. The areas are going to include Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Macedonia, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Yugoslavia. All of these areas right here, again, and you start looking at the Balkan Peninsula right here, you're going to go ahead and you're going to see a lot of different types of people in here, a lot of different types of trading going back and forth. We've already talked about cultural crossroads there, but what we can look at in times to kind of the history of this is that Rome is going to hold the Balkan Peninsula, again the peninsula we were just looking at, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, all of them. Later it's going to be held by the Byzantine Empire, and then it's the Ottoman Empire in the 1400s that expands, and again that's going to bring the Muslim religion. Slavs are going to move from the 400s to the 600s, Polish, Serbian kingdoms form, non-Slavic Magyars are going to take Hungary in the 800s, later going to be conquered by the Ottomans. So again, what we see here, and we talked about in chapter 13 section 3, we talked about how kingdoms start to emerge, and then those kingdoms are going to become countries. It's the same thing that's happening right here, but what you're seeing is that they continue to change form. You're seeing them that they're going to be Christian, then they're going to be Muslim, and then the people kind of decide what they want to be. Austria becomes a great power in the 1400s, takes Hungary for the Ottomans, and then in the 1700s, Austria, Prussia, and Russia are going to divide up Poland. So we see that these kingdoms are really going all over the place, and these kingdoms really do not have a long longevity because of the Muslim Empire. Now the Balkan nations break from the Ottoman Empire in 1908. Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia are going to defeat the Ottomans in 1912, and you have what's known as Balkanization. Make sure that you know what Balkanization is. This is going to be a region that breaks up into small hostile units. The Slavic Serbia wants to be free from the Austro-Hungary Slavs, and this is going to essentially to start World War I. We'll talk about this more when we talk about the Balkan conflict, but what we see is that the Serbians are going to go ahead and they're going to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which again, because of all of the countries that are going to be connected, this is going to start World War I. And you remember the alliances and everything that you've seen. So again, this area is where all of World War I really, that's kind of the powder keg that starts the explosion of World War I. Now, you're going to see war after war. Austria and Hungary are going to split. Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Yugoslavia all gain independence. But Germany takes Poland in 1939, which is going to start World War II. Now, on the other side, on the east part of Eastern Europe, the Soviets are going to capture and dominate these nations. They kind of start going in there. And one of the things about communism and one of the things about the Soviet Union that Harry Truman taught us was that you have to go in and you have to, if you're going to continue to be successful with communism, you have to go and you have to take over countries to get resources. The problem is that the Soviet Union's is so close to these Western nations, they don't want to mess with China, so they're going to go ahead and they're going to try to take over Eastern European countries. The Soviets capture and dominate this area. They become the communist USSR's satellite nations. What is a satellite nation? It's a nation that is connected a little bit farther away, but again helps out with resources and things like that. Now in the late 1980s, USSR is going to have economic problems. Gorbachev is going to make a lot of reforms. You're going to see Mikhail Gorbachev is going to get perestroika and things like that. Doesn't work out, and we'll go more about that when we go into the Soviet Union. But Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, Romania, they're going to remove communism in 1989, and this is what you remember from your American history. It's known as the domino effect. After communism, what we see is that instability is really going on in this area. Yugoslavia is going to violently divide. Czechoslovakia splits into the Czech Republic and Slovakia. So when you start kind of going through your map test, this is why you start seeing those countries may not be exactly named what you've learned in your history, because they've kind of been changing and adapting. Now, what's going on with the economy with these countries? Under communism, the government owns and controls the factories. Insufficient system brings shortages, trade deficits, pollution. Really a major problem with these countries in Eastern Europe is that the Soviet Union goes in and they just take. And again, like we said, the pollution factor is just one of the bad things, that they basically leave those factories there and all they're worried about is getting money. And so when they collapse, there has to be a need for change. After 1989, the region tries market economy, making consumer goods how the consumers wanted. Factories will be privately owned, but inflation and unemployment rise. What we see with inflation is that when you kind of take off the shackles of communism, people start saying, well, I'm going to put the price as high as I want. Well, what people don't understand is that the higher the price is, that's what's called inflation. The prices continue to skyrocket, and then pretty soon everybody has to raise their prices to make ends meet, and inflation is a real nasty thing. Unemployment occurs because you can't pay money or pay people because you don't have any more money. Cost cutting, improved production helped, and some economies are going to grow, but there's going to be lingering problems. For example, Albania has old equipment, lack of materials, few educated workers. Romanians are going to lack money to invest, and the government owns small industries. But you will see the culture continuing to go on, but there's quite a bit of cultural diversity. Number of languages make the region unification difficult. Region is going to have Catholicism. They're also going to have Eastern Orthodox, Protestantism minority, where Islam from the Ottoman Empire still goes along. And this is where you're going to see the Holocaust, which is going to kill 6 million Jews. Half of them are going to be from Poland. So to be able to bring people together is very difficult, because there are still a lot of people that have ill feelings about the Holocaust. Different types of languages makes it difficult. That's a barrier. And then of course religion is always a barrier. Now you do have folk art. Folk art is produced by rural people with traditional lifestyles. This is things like pottery, wood carving, traditional costumes. Folk music then is also going to be influenced by Chopin and Dvorak, which again is going to be kind of their own type of culture, and folk art becomes kind of reflective of their culture. Less urban development. Large cities include 1,000-year-old Prague and Czech Republic. Most of the region has fewer urban residents than the rest of Europe. Only 40% in Bosnia-Herzegovina, 30% in Albania live in cities. So what we see is that the cities are growing and they're developing, but they're going to be a little bit behind because of what happens with the Soviet Union to Eastern Europe up until 1992. Cities will grow as industry develops, so will pollution, traffic, housing problems, and that's something that everybody's worried about. You're also going to see other conflicts. There's fierce loyalty toward ethnic groups that are going to lead to violence. Many of the Serbs are going to hate the Croats from World War II collaboration with the Nazis, and we're going to talk later about this with the Balkan conflict, that the Serbs and the Croats have been fighting for a long period of time because, like we said, the Croats are going to help the Nazis exterminate people, and the Serbs don't like this at all, obviously. Now, last but not least, there's going to be some discrimination against minority groups. Anti-Semitism is going to be discrimination against Jewish people. You also are going to see discrimination against nomadic Romanians, which are called gypsies. And if you know anything about the Holocaust, a lot of people think it was just Jewish people that were killed, when in fact you had really anybody that was not the Aryan race, even these gypsy people that were walking around. Democracy, Eastern Europe is the must overcome old hatreds. Unlike past dictators, officials must obey the rule of law. 2000, Yugoslavia enforced out a dictator who lost the election, which showed that they could go ahead and they could have this democracy. This is the end of Chapter 13, Section 4. Please complete your assessments at this time.